Even Russian military bloggers are admitting the disaster. For the first time in over a year, Russia is losing more territory than it can seize. There is no understanding by the troops on the front line what they're doing and why they're doing it. We're seeing the pressure from the Ukrainians pushing out onto the Russians growing even bigger by itself. As all eyes are on Iran, there are significant updates still from Ukraine. I'm Philip Ingram, and this is Battle Plans Exposed. Donald Trump made his move. Ayatollah Khamenei is dead. A key ally of Putin. How will this impact the war in Ukraine? Is this a catastrophic setback for the Russian military machine? And did Trump play Putin beautifully? In key areas, Putin's forces are facing encirclement and withdrawing, and Ukraine is inflicting record high casualties on the Russian army, and Ukraine's new sovereign weapon systems that are coming online are delivering their objectives. We'll take a look at all of these warnings and indicators from across the globe. But first, let's take a look at the clips from the front line. So our first video shows the wreckage of an Iranian Shahed kamikaze drone launched at the British military base and sovereign base area in Cyprus. But if you look closer, the fingerprints are Russian. Recovery teams found this, a Russian-made Kometa satellite navigation module. It's an advanced anti-jamming system designed to beat our electronic warfare and maintain pinpoint accuracy in contested skies. But here's the scandal. It's built using Western components. You can clearly see the name of the manufacturer. This isn't just an Iranian threat. It's a lethal fusion of Russian engineering and smuggled technology. It proves the Kremlin's reach is wider and more interconnected than many realize. In our second video, shocking footage shows Russian phosphorus bombs raining down on the city of Konstantinivka in Ukraine. Now, the use of phosphorus in a battlefield situation is allowed, provided, and this is white phosphorus, provided it is used purely as an obscurant. It is not allowed under international law to be dropped in built-up areas, as we're seeing here, and used as an incendiary device. It'll burn through anything. You can pour water on it, and that doesn't stop it. It is lethal when dropped on built-up areas, as we're seeing here. Next, we have a continuation of the future of the drone war. A Ukrainian interceptor equipped with a net launching system. It's hunting Russian reconnaissance UAVs with clinical precision. In this sector alone, the crew is averaging about 10 intercepts every single day. No expensive missiles, no electronic jamming, just a clean mechanical kill that's neutralizing Putin's eyes in the sky. And in this last clip, Ukraine has just revealed its latest homegrown missile, the FP7, something that President Zelensky alluded to last year. Developed by the defense firm Firepoint, the team behind the famous FP5 Flamingo cruise missile, this new system marks another leap in Kyiv's domestic long-range capabilities. Footage shows the FP7 launching from a mobile ground platform, showcasing its incredible acceleration, and with a range of 200-ish kilometers and a top speed of Mach 4.4, that's 1,500 meters per second. This tactical ballistic missile is designed to hit Russian assets accurately and with a massive warhead, 150 kilograms of high explosives. So we begin with a seismic event that has sent shockwaves from Tehran to Moscow. The world waited with bated breath to see how Moscow would react following Operation Epic Fury, the US and Israeli strikes that resulted in the deaths of the Iranian Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei and members of his family and several senior Iranian officials from the Iranian Revolutionary Guards Corps and other military and political officials. As we explored in previous episode, Iran has been a critical lifeline for Russia, supplying thousands of Shahed drones and components through the Caspian Sea up to Russia and munitions to help sustain Putin's war in Ukraine. But what did Iran get in its darkest hour? Just empty words. Russian President Vladimir Putin sent a message to the Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian expressing condolences and condemning the strikes as a cynical violation of human morality and international law. Notably, Putin didn't even dare to mention the United States or Israel directly by name in his primary statement. He called Khamenei an outstanding statesman who elevated the Russian-Iranian relationship to a strategic partnership. The Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs and top diplomats like Sergei Lavrov went into overdrive, making calls to the UAE, to Qatar and China, pleading for a resumption of diplomatic dialogue and complaining about international law. But here's the critical intelligence takeaway. Russia's response is pure boilerplate. It highlights a massive asymmetry in the Russian-Iranian relationship, and when Moscow needed weapons, Tehran delivered. But now that Tehran's leadership has been decimated, Moscow is offering absolutely zero material support. The Kremlin is entirely constrained by its own meat grinder war on Ukraine. They simply do not have the bandwidth, the resources, or the political capital to back up Iran. Putin is paralysed, desperate to extract concessions from the West without sacrificing his Ukrainian campaign, leaving his so-called strategic partner to fend for itself. Trump, whenever he decided with the Israelis to attack into Iran after the failure in the negotiations over Iran's nuclear program, had three options. He could have bombed Iranian nuclear sites, which he had done last year, and had said that he'd decimated them. Clearly not, if he was continuing with nuclear negotiations. He could have attacked the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps and other military targets throughout Iran to send a message to the military. Or he could have gone for decapitation. In military terms, decapitation is the hardest to have a clear outcome and to be able to plan and guarantee that outcome, which is something every military planner wants and every military commander wants to know what their end state is, the goal that they have to achieve. And can you achieve regime change by actions purely from the air? It's very difficult indeed. And therefore the detail of this plan, the detail of the actual end state that Donald Trump has set will be interesting. I don't expect that to come out publicly, because if it did, it would tell Iran exactly what Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu are trying to do. So this strategic ambiguity is all part of the plan. Let's hope that the detailed plans are there. So let's turn our attention to Ukraine. On the ground, the reality for Russian logistics is bleak. In the north, the Kremlin is trying to carve out a buffer zone in Sumy. But the state of their forces is staggering. Reports confirm a chilling purge of the sick and wounded and the elderly from the 22nd Motorised Regiment. These men were dumped into a frontline reconnaissance unit with just 1 week of training. Even worse, they're off the books. No pay for the soldiers and no compensation for their families when they're killed. In the east, the war of attrition continues. Despite relentless assaults near Kupiansk and Borova, Putin's forces have made zero significant gains. Ukrainian counterattacks have stalled them cold, with the only minor Russian tactical advance recorded near Kostantinivka. But Ukraine isn't just defending, they're systematically dismantling Russia's rear. In Belgorod, they have struck drone control points, neutralizing the pilots before they even reach the front. Deeper still, the damage is catastrophic. On the 1st of March, a massive strike in occupied Yalta, 100 kilometers behind the lines, wiped out a valuable S-300 air defense system and its radar. From oil depots in Makiivka to fuel hubs in Zaporizhia, Ukraine is starving the Russian machine of fuel and ammunition, the ammunition it needs to survive. Open source trackers like the Blackbird group reported Russia lost 37 square kilometers of territory that they had captured in February, with Ukraine advancing a total of 192 square kilometers near Hulyapol in the Zaporizhia Oblast, and more in neighboring areas. Commander-in-Chief of the Ukrainian forces, Oleksandr Syetsky, confirmed the troops recaptured more land than Russia had seized, citing 92,850 Russian casualties over the winter at over 1,000 dead and wounded per day. Analysts call these tactical wins amid Russia's broader initiative, offering Ukraine a morale lift as the war enters its 5th year and spring approaches. On top of this, there's more disastrous updates for Putin. An intelligence assessment provided to the British military revealed a staggering 1 to 27 kill ratio in the battle for Kupiansk. And according to analyst Andrew Perpetua, who meticulously counts drone kills, in February, Ukraine killed 193 Russians per day. That's just the drone kills. It doesn't take into account those that he didn't see, artillery and other battlefield deaths. Let that sink in. Across the month of February, that's 5,406 that he has observed killed in total. Not casualties or wounded, 193 killed by drones every day that he can confirm in the videos that he has watched. New Russian advice is telling soldiers to remain still and play dead when being spotted by drones, resulting in nightmarish consequences. And we're seeing reports of total morale collapse through the ranks. Russian troops are being extorted by their commanders and charging up to $40,000 not to be used in meat wave assaults. Now, this is impacting what in the West we describe as the moral component of fighting power. There is no understanding by the troops on the front line what they're doing and why they're doing it. They don't have a moral connection with the war that they're being asked to fight, and therefore they're being forced to the front line. This is why we're seeing many of them, as soon as they come in contact with the Ukrainians, turning around and either surrendering or running away. We're seeing a collapse in Russia's ability to carry out coordinated military activity on the front line because they're using troops that are poorly trained, poorly motivated, not being looked after, and being abused by their commanders. But let's take a closer look at the gains by Ukraine in the south and the potential encirclement of Putin's troops by Ukraine. So let's look at the map between Dobropilya and Temryvivka. This is the vital artery for the Russian southern grouping, and right now it's being severed. This area is significant as it sits between three oblasts: Dnipropetrovsk, Zaporizhia, and we have Donetsk Oblast off to the east. Now, in military terms and military doctrine terms, you always look for boundaries, and military formations tend to deploy with geographic boundaries or different political boundaries that are on the ground for ease. If you can find a boundary, there tends to be a crack in it. It causes confusion across command and control between different formations that are on those boundaries, and that is probably why the Ukrainians are concentrating in this area and concentrating their attacks in it. For months, we've seen Russia exhaust its men in infiltration attacks. Infantry literally walking kilometres across open fields just to plant a flag and take a photograph before being wiped out. But Ukraine has flipped the script. They aren't walking, they're surging forward in Western armoured vehicles. If we look at the map between Kalinivka and Novomykhailivka, Ukrainian forces have effectively severed the main supply road. So by crossing this artery, they've left the Russian garrison in Berezova completely isolated. If Ukrainian armour pushes from Slavne towards Zaporizhia in the coming days, these Russian units won't just be defeated, they will be completely encircled. Russia is also pulling forces back from Pravilia as the Ukrainians advance. Even Russian military bloggers like Rybar are admitting the disaster. For the first time in over a year, Russia is losing more territory than it can seize. It is a testament to the new Ukrainian defence reforms and the superior communications that they're using on the battlefield. Whilst the Russians struggle with poor radio links and telegram-based command, Ukraine is using its initiative to turn Berezova into a terminal kill zone. While Russia's diplomatic leverage crumbles in the Middle East, its economic lifelines are being severed in Europe. For the past few years, Russia has relied heavily on a shadow fleet, a network of decrepit, untracked oil tankers flying flags of convenience to bypass Western sanctions and fund its war machine. But the European Union has had enough, and they're moving from sanctions to direct action. Enter Operation Blue Intruder. On the 1st of March, the Belgian Defence Minister Theo Fraken announced a stunning maritime raid. Belgian special forces, supported directly by the French Navy and French Navy helicopters, successfully boarded and seized a Russian Shadow Fleet oil tanker in international waters. This wasn't just a warning. The vessel is currently being escorted by a military force to the port of Zeebrugge for formal seizure. The ship in question is the Aethera. At the time of the raid, it was flying a Ghanaian flag and making a dead run towards Russia. Maritime intelligence from the starboard platform paints a damning picture of this vessel. It's a ghost ship. It has been hopping between the flags of Guinea, Panama, Martinique, and Equatorial Guinea. It made multiple illicit runs to the Russian port of Novorossiysk. Most tellingly, the ship's automatic identification system, its transponder, went completely dark from October 2025 all the way through to February 2026. Both the US Office of Foreign Asset Control and the EU had this ship on their kill lists as a sanctioned entity. The Russian embassy in Belgium is scrambling, claiming they haven't received official communications and are desperately trying to figure out the nationality of the crew. This raid by Belgian and French forces represents a massive escalation in the economic war. The West is no longer just tracking these sanction-busting ghost ships, they're hunting them down and seizing them at sea. Now this comes from the additional pressure that's coming on Vladimir Putin. If we look at what has happened in recent weeks and months, we've seen his supporter in Central America, Maduro, being seized from Venezuela by the Americans. We are now seeing Iran being attacked by the Americans and the Israelis. We have seen Russian activity in Syria pushed out completely by the new Syrian government, with access to the Mediterranean Sea for the Russian Mediterranean fleet curtailed. We have seen pressure coming on the international shipping that Russia is using, these ghost ships, not just from the EU, but also from the Americans. And we've seen the Americans very audaciously attack and capture a ghost ship in the middle of the Atlantic. And of course, the Ukrainians are imposing their own sanctions and have attacked with UAVs, Russian Shadow Fleet ships operating inside the Mediterranean, inside the Black Sea, and elsewhere. We're seeing pressure coming on Putin from the outside, from the international community, and interestingly, no matter what Donald Trump says, from Donald Trump and the Americans. At the same time, we're seeing the pressure from the Ukrainians pushing out onto the Russians growing even bigger by itself. Now let's take a look at the fascinating developments around drone technology. We're witnessing a fundamental shift in American air power. For years, the Americans have relied on drones like this, the MQ-9 Reaper, a $30 million precision instrument. But look at this. Does it look familiar? When I first saw it, I thought, aha, it's a Shahad. It's not. It's a Lucas drone. Lucas stands for Low Cost, Uncrewed Combat Attack System. It looks familiar because it's a near exact replica of the Iranian Shahad 136, something that Iran has supplied to Russia and has been used to devastating effect in its attacks on Ukraine. But the Iranians have re-engineered it, as we've seen with some of the attacks that have occurred on the British sovereign base area in Cyprus, and attacks coming in the Middle East with Russian electronics or Russian procured electronics and other systems on board. The US military didn't just study captured Shahads from Ukraine, they reverse engineered them. Here's where we can see the US Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, looking at the Lucas in a display of military capability. But how did they get that re-engineering? Well, they had to strip them down and get their circuit boards. But to do that, they had to shoot them down, first of all. And it's drones like this Ukrainian anti-drone drone that has managed to shoot some of the Shahads down. And we've seen the Shahads, as they hit the field, their components are taken away and examined in detail to allow the reverse engineering by the Americans in this case. Reverse engineering on the battlefield is something that always happens. And it's he who can reverse engineer and develop new technology quickest is the one that often wins. Reports suggest that 60,000 Shahed drones have been launched into Ukraine over the 4 years. And with the Lucas at just $35,000 a pop, we've seen the move from the exquisite technology to affordable mass. While a single Reaper is too precious to lose, the Lucas is designed to be expendable. The US can buy nearly 1,000 Lucas drones for the price of one Reaper. In a war of attrition, quantity has a quality all of its own. And while it looks like a Shahed, it is vastly superior. It has a mesh network allowing swarming. Effectively, they talk to each other, and anti-jamming GNSS making it much harder to stop than the original Iranian version. These were just used for the first time in combat during Operation Epic Fury against Iranian targets, a huge psychological blow to the Iranian Revolutionary Guards Corps. Ironically, the Iranians spent decades perfecting a poor man's cruise missile to bypass US defences, only for the US to steal the blueprints and mass produce a much better version in months. The Pentagon's precision missile stocks, like Tomahawks, can run low in days. Lucas solves the ammo maths by providing a deep magazine of long-range strike options that don't break the bank. It's the US flipping the script, launching swarms of Iranian-designed, American-made retribution back at the very people who pioneered the tactic. Of course, when we get the exquisite drones, like the MQ-9 Reaper, and I've tasked earlier versions of the Reaper on operations, there's an even bigger daddy, an even more exquisite drone, which is the RQ-4 Global Hawk. And on operations in the Balkans, as a NATO officer, I was one of the first privileged to put one of the first taskings into the Global Hawk when it was flown in an operational scenario for the first time. It is a phenomenal beast that can stay in the air for much longer than a day. And it is primarily an intelligence gathering platform, flying very high, flying very long, loitering, just watching, listening, gathering everything it can and providing a unique intelligence insight to what is going on the ground. So what we're seeing is strategic paralysis in Moscow. Putin is watching his key Middle Eastern ally decapitated while he stands there helpless. On the water, his shadow fleet is being seized, and on the ground, his generals are so desperate they're sending sick, unpaid men into the meat grinder. Ukraine isn't just holding the line, it's dismantling the Russian machine. The battle plans are exposed, and they reveal a military running on fumes, on corruption, and on pure desperation. So thanks for watching Battle Plans Exposed. If you like what you've seen, please hit the button below. Feel free to comment, ask us for things to have a look at in the future, and subscribe to our channel. But as importantly, share it amongst your friends. Bring in more people. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.